And one. Well, hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you this week. I got a super easy question for you on the surface, but I guarantee it's gonna cause you to think as you start to unpack this in your brain and as myself and my guest unpack this with you this week. And the question is, are you anxious or stressed right now? And on the surface, you're either going to go to an immediate, yes, I'm overwhelmed, stressed, or no, I think I'm okay. Is stress good? Is stress bad? How does it tie into confidence? We're going to talk about all that today. I'm honored to be hanging out with Doug Finkelstein. How are you today, my friend?
I'm doing wonderfully. Thanks for having me on, Dave.
Absolutely. You're the founder and community manager at Slow the F Down. So fill us in on what is Slow the F Down? What's going on there today?
We do exactly that, and we help other people do exactly that. Slow the F down. So I went bold with the name because really I'm trying to remind myself every day to slow the F down. So I want that message to stand out amongst all of the other information that we get just kind of poured into us and at us every single day. So what we do at like the really high level is practices to help us slow down. And that looks like yoga, breath work, journaling, coming together for fun, seemingly pointless conversations like do aliens exist? All these things to just get us out of our day-to-day grind feeling and get us back into our bodies and slowing down.
So I gotta ask because that's kind of funny. I totally get the journaling piece. I totally get the breathing piece. Totally on board with that. What does it have to do with do aliens exist? I mean, I'm just curious. How did you jump into that question? I love that. Fill me in
Yeah,
on where that came from.
how that specific conversation came up was through one of our yoga and breathwork events. Just afterward, we were talking about our experience, and I don't remember what spurred it, but that topic came up, and someone said, "Oh, that'd be such a fun thing to go, deep dive on and have a bigger conversation about." So I put it on our community calendar, and that's what we
Yeah.
did. And we did a audio only conversation, so people were stretching on their yoga mat. They were preparing dinner. It was just something fun, out of the norm to
Sure.
do that wasn't focused on like, oh, I need to work on my body. I need to work on
Yeah.
my business. It's just like, let's just hang out and do nothing for a little while.
Sure, that's awesome. And as we talked before we jumped on, Doug, with the amount of entrepreneurs and business owners that watch this or listen to this around the planet, I'm just curious. You must get a lot of initial resistance from entrepreneurs and business owners when they hear the word slow down because they're always going so fast. We're always trying to figure out the next thing. We're always trying to do this, that, and the other thing. So is that a natural thing for people listening right now that might be hesitating on that slow down piece? Is that pretty normal?
Yeah, that's a super interesting question. So I think it really depends on how you look at it. The short answer is yes, it feels normal to resist slowing down. But the caveat I'll say is that I don't think that is a natural human instinct to feel the need to go fast. I think it's a cultural and societal one that everything we see in the news and hear about businesses raising money, it's all very fast, very stealth, how quickly you got to beat your competitors.
Yeah,
And in some industries that might be true. And if it's working for you and you enjoy it, then go for it. Who am I to tell you not to?
yeah.
I speak from my experience and the experience of many people I've talked to of just constantly burning out and feeling overwhelmed and realizing that when we trust we can just slow down and move more intentionally and deliberately, the same amount of productivity gets done, if not more, and we're not exhausting ourselves. So this notion of go slow to go fast is I find to be really true, and it's just a matter of having faith in that philosophy and putting it into practice.
Gotcha. Well, and I was thinking back, like I was going to say, like 150 years ago, when the U.S. was getting developed and when it was getting, was expanding, you could only go as fast as the horse you were on or the train or whatever. But then you start thinking about like the gold rush, and it was like, oh my gosh, it's a race, right? So I almost feel like way back then, even there was some of that in people's minds.
For
And I'm
sure.
just
Sorry,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, it reminds me of a funny joke I heard a comedian tell. That mindfulness is a totally new topic because we have these supercomputers in our pocket. And, it used to be if you were sitting around waiting for a bus, you had to be mindful because there was nothing else to do. You couldn't just get on your
Right.
phone and start doing infinite things. So it's like you said, yeah, and up until 20 years ago, like
Yeah.
mindfulness just had to be part of our day-to-day lives, and now it's not.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy. I travel a lot and I'm in airports regularly. And boy, if they are not more often than not, people are on their phones waiting for the flight. I mean, it's
Mm,
it's rare to find someone reading a book anymore. It's rare to find someone having a conversation. Everybody's just glued to that screen. And it's just I'm assuming it's becoming second nature. So does part of your slowing down piece is electronics involved? I know it's kind of a weird question, but I'm assuming putting that down is probably one of the first things that has to happen. And again, maybe it's putting it down at times or for a certain amount of time. But what are your thoughts there? How did that work in your world?
Yeah, I love that question because it's something I'm really proud of. I view us using technology as a tool for us, which is really what it's meant to do, right? So our weekly yoga breathwork sessions are done virtually, and we take advantage of all the benefits of that. You don't have
Sure.
to drive into a yoga studio. You don't have to use a mat someone else just used and was sweating on.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay for each individual class. And my personal favorite, like when I do yoga, my body has noises it wants to make, whether it's passing gas or burping or
Yeah.
cracking. And I always kind of hold all that stuff in at a studio because I'm right next
Yeah.
to some stranger. When I do
Right.
it at home, we're doing it together over
Yeah.
Zoom, but everyone's microphone is on mute. So
There
we
you go.
actually
Yeah.
encourage it for our people. We're like, scream, cry, punch a
Yeah.
pillow, like do all
Yeah.
these things that your body wants to do that it doesn't get a chance to because you don't have to worry about how is someone else next to me going to be impacted by this because we
Yeah.
have this great technology that can put us together but also keep us separate to do these things.
That's awesome. The few times that I got lassoed into doing yoga, Doug, I was just like saying, like, oh my gosh, how in the world do I do that? I've never seen that done before. My body can't do that. So there were people looking at me going, what the heck? So I totally can imagine that it'd be way more stress-free to be hanging out at home, enjoying it on a Zoom call. So that's awesome. So kind of take us back, if you would, Doug, into your world. I love listening to your journey. And you were in corporate America. And again, there's a lot of people listening right now that love this story part because they always want to know how people started in corporate America and ended up owning their own business. Because quite frankly, a lot of people want to do what we do, but they don't understand that journey. And I always say up front, there's no right or wrong way. Don't quit your job tomorrow just because of what you heard, so there's always caveats to that. But just kind of walk us through that if you could on that journey for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So since I was a teenager around 13, I was on this chronic medication called Propecia. It's for hair loss, and every male in my family was bald, and I was really self-conscious. So I was told there's this pill I can take, and magically I'll keep my hair. So I was like, yeah, of course, I'll do that. Didn't work that way, and it led to really challenging mental, physical, emotional side effects. and I wasn't willing to stop taking it because I wasn't willing to lose my hair. So I was on it until I was 23. I was working in finance in New York City at the time, and I found an online community of other people taking this same drug, sharing absolute horror stories of the side effects they were having. And that really sunk in for me of what's the point of doing this if I'm not going to be able to enjoy my life.
Yeah.
So I quit taking it the next day after finding that community. And uh, as it got out of my system after a few months, I did my first meditation, 5 minutes on my bed. I fell asleep immediately, but it was the start of a practice. And that led to trying some yoga, some journaling, and really just like exploring life and being able to live, which I wasn't doing the past decade.
Sure.
So eventually, magic mushrooms piqued my interest. I had a fantastic journey out in nature with some friends, and that is where it really clicked that I didn't feel like I was contributing to the world in the way I wanted to in my finance job. So I quit that. I moved across the country. I went to graduate school. And throughout my future plant medicine journeys after that mushroom trip, I realized that I loved talking about these medicines and helping people get connected and talk when they didn't have their own friends or family that were willing to talk about this stuff. So I realized I wanted a place for conversations like this to happen. So
Yeah.
I went about creating it. And that's how I started my first community to connect people in the plant medicine space. And ever since then, I've just been totally in love with the community component, like seeing people get connected that I was able to assist in making that happen, and the business relationships, the personal relationships, everything that comes from that human to human interaction is
Sure.
really rewarding for me. So that's kind of how I got started.
Wow. And so when you were in the banking world, did you feel like eventually you would start your own business? Was that even on your radar, or was that just something that didn't even cross your mind at that point?
I still don't feel like I'm going to start my own business, even though I have multiple at this point. So to answer your question, like, no, I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. That never really appealed to me when I saw my friends that were. But I just get these ideas I'm really passionate about and want to
Yeah.
exist, and then I go after them.
And I think that brings up a really good point, Doug, is the word entrepreneur probably means different things to different people. Some people think that we can hang out on a beach all day and, shoot a couple emails out, make a couple $1 million, and then get back to laying in the sun, which again, I'm sure there's people listening that works for. That's awesome. And I think the other side is the other group of people that, are almost like stuck for 18 hours a day trying to make this business work. And I think that's where the stress comes in. And I started out by asking about stress. So, where did the stress piece come in for you? Because you're working with people that are stressed out, that have anxiety, that struggle with confidence. So, where did your avatar come from? Where did that group come from? People that you're like, hey, I think I can add some value to that group.
My own experience for sure, and just talking to people that were interested in what I was doing and really getting that feedback. I've always been a huge feedback person. I love asking for feedback on everything because when I listen, and I always try to, there's so much valuable insight. And yeah, that's what I learned and was learning, that people are just really stressed out. And it's understandable. Like we bring in, I forget the exact number, but it's like 100x multiple more information just coming at us every day than 100 years ago, probably even
Sure.
less. And like the brain didn't evolve to handle that, so naturally we're stressed like that. That's not surprising at all. Where we what we don't have with all this information is knowledge, and specifically the knowledge to deal with day-to-day stressors in this modern technology world we're in. And the great thing is it's not some, you know, giant gadget you have to wear on your head that will help calm you down and get you a few more minutes of REM sleep. Like you can do that stuff, but what really works the best is are the things that have been working the best for thousands of years. A yoga practice, which is really just body movement and moving energy through the body that wants to move. Journaling, just writing stuff down on paper instead of typing it in a computer. Breath work, literally breathing. uh, a lot of ancient languages, the word breath and spirit are the same. Like our breathing is our life, and it's so tightly correlated to the quality of our life. And 80 something percent of people take most of their breaths just in the chest and not down into the diaphragm. And even just something as simple as that can regulate the nervous system and help people just reach a new level of calm. And all it takes is a slight change in that thing we're doing every 5 seconds of breathing in and out.
Sure. And we'll, after the break, we'll kind of talk through that. But I want to ask you about this feedback thing because um, I'm guessing a lot of people listening right now, including myself, struggle with feedback. They love to give feedback, but boy, it's really challenging to receive it. And we do a lot of work in communication, and a lot of times we're not really listening. Like if I ask you for feedback on something and you start talking about, something that I did and providing me feedback, a lot of times my brain is either, justifying what you're saying or it's trying to come up with some reasons why and listen, and I'm doing a rebuttal in my head, which I'm really not listening if you're giving me feedback. So for people listening, is there a simple way to work through that? Because feedback, I think, is really helpful for a lot of people, but boy, it's really hard to receive at times. So I'm just curious, Doug, if you found anything that's helped you to be able to receive feedback from pretty much anybody that you ask about it.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I can only speak for myself because we are all so different in
Yeah.
this regard. I find when I'm the one asking for it, I did this to myself, right? So that conscious choice is such a big difference. It's the difference
Okay.
between anxiety and excitement. And the only difference between those two things is the conscious choice to enjoy it. That's what turns anxiety into excitement. So consciously asking, and then yeah, still sometimes, I get feedback that pisses me off because I feel it's untrue or
Yeah. Right.
I don't like that part about myself. So to hear it out loud,
Yeah.
uh, being able to be okay with that and process those emotions and still say yes. And this other thing they said or this thing is really important for me to hear and valuable, and I
Yeah.
can now act on that or factor it into my decision making moving forward. So yeah, it's not there's nothing wrong with having the feedback personally affect me. It's just it becomes a problem if I let that override the very valuable insights that are within that feedback.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think that's the gold part there. But like you said, I think it's important for us, like unsolicited feedback is probably a little harder for us to listen to than solicited feedback. Because if I ask you, hey, what are your thoughts about X? I'm hopefully anticipating positive, negative, whatever. I'm anticipating something coming back that's going to be useful to me. I still get to decide if I want to bring it into my brain and utilize it or just kind of say, hey, thanks for the info, we can agree to disagree or whatever. But what is it harder for you for unsolicited feedback if somebody just starts, providing feedback on something you didn't ask? Is that
Yeah.
that seems to be a little bit harder, I would guess.
I love that question. Depends on the person and situation. I got a piece of advice once that I really like, and it's uh, don't take criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from. And most people I would not take advice from.
Yeah,
So I think there's something to be said for personal boundaries. Like if I am getting feedback that is unexpected or yeah, unsolicited um, how much value am I putting in the person and how they're delivering it, and uh, and then kind of going from there. So having my own boundaries set up to protect myself from the world and from people that just go about saying and doing things that I don't need to and I don't want to bring into my space.
Sure. And I think, it's interesting because the research that I've done on the brain, our brain is on our shoulders pretty much to protect us. And it's interesting because it doesn't really understand certain things because that's one of them that's like unsolicited feedback versus solicited. Unsolicited feedback can be really dangerous if we depending on what we do with that. So that's what I think is really helpful is to surround yourself with people that are open, would be open with you, but also aren't going to jam it down your throat because nothing worse than choking on good words, but they're not fit, they're not spoken at the right time or in the right manner. So I really appreciate that. That's pretty cool. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I really want to kind of look at where anxiety and stress are and what are some things we can do to combat that, and then how to work through that confidence piece because I think there's a fine line between cockiness and confidence. And so I want to get your feedback on that. So we'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm honored to be hanging out with Doug Finkelstein, the founder and community manager of Slow the F Down. And we are excited to be talking today about stress and anxiety, and we're excited to talk about confidence. And so before the break, I wanted to kind of get that your feedback, solicited feedback on the difference between like cockiness and confidence, because I know both people, but it's hard to kind of really put my finger on what's different between the two. So, in your experience, I'm just curious, Doug, what do you see as the difference between those two?
Yeah, tough to delineate sometimes for sure. It can
Yeah,
be a fine line. The interesting thing about confidence is it it's created when it's still imaginary. And what I mean by that is the way to get confidence and the way I became confident in myself was to just decide to start believing I was. And then that belief, while I wasn't, is what started to make me confident. So my belief in it is what created it. And to answer your question more directly, the difference I feel between being confident and being overconfident to the point of cockiness is the ability to be humble and to be open to advice and feedback from other people. And I see that as someone overconfident or cocky, um, having full faith in their abilities and believing that they're always right. And
yeah,
no one can prove them wrong because they're always right. So there's no need to ever have any doubt in themselves
sure,
and not being open to ways to grow. Um, where confidence is I trust myself, I have faith in myself, and I believe I'm always getting better. So I'm open to feedback on how to do that. I'm open to how this landed for you. Maybe I didn't communicate it in the best way, even if my intention was strong. So yeah, there's no um, feeling that of my way or the highway with
sure.
with true authentic confidence. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you use these words, I'm open to, and I don't think a cocky or overconfident person is going to use those words very much because they've already made up their mind. They're already set. They're really not going to, move off of wherever they're at, which again isn't good or bad. I just think that being open to something, it's a whole lot easier to have a conversation with somebody, Doug, that's open rather than somebody that's closed. It's like, why are we even having this conversation? You've already made up your mind. You already know where this is headed. It's kind of futile. So do you seem in your work? do you run into a lot of people that they're starting off as closed and then they get more open, like yoga, journaling, breathing? I gotta believe some of those words are kind of like stressful to the people listening just because they've never done it, or they might have some preconceived notion to that. I mean, I've done all three of those, and I'm still totally, like I wish I could figure this yoga thing out where it's like, how in the world do you stretch like that, like we were talking about before? But I'm just curious, do you seem to start with somebody that's a lot more closed-minded, and as they spend time with you, they tend to open up?
I've seen all over the spectrum of uh, open-mindedness for sure when it comes to this. I the general path, and it's certainly not the path everyone takes, but a fairly common path is at first these practices are really hard because they require us to kind of do nothing for a little while. And the yoga by and large that we practice is yin yoga, which is uh, most times we don't even get up off of our back or our knees. Like we're not even standing. It's not this hard workout style yoga. It's just being there in our bodies and holding a fairly easy stretch for 3, 4 minutes. And
Oh,
when was the last time most of us consciously not trying to go to bed or watch TV just kind of sat there for 3 or 4 minutes, maybe in a very light stretch,
sure.
like years.
Yeah.
So
I
that
thought you were
that's
going to say 3 or 4
uncomfortable.
seconds there, Doug. Oh, yeah, you
Yeah,
said
no,
3 or 4 minutes, right?
minutes, and yeah,
That's
and they can go
intense.
even longer than that.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think that is what's uncomfortable to people is like, okay, I'm in minute one and
Right.
now I'm bored. Like, let me start thinking about my to-do list for
Yep.
tomorrow and
Yep.
what project am I working on? And that is what's uncomfortable. The more
Yeah.
we can tell ourselves, hey, I set aside this 30, 45 minutes to not think about those things. They'll be there for me when I'm done if I want to pick them
Sure.
up again. And
Yeah.
suddenly we learn how to slow the F down.
Wow.
And the way creativity tends to work, and Rick Rubin talks about this in the Creative Act. There's tons of support for this, that that freedom and space and quieting of the mind helps it make the connections that it can't when it's constantly in that go, go, go mode. So by giving our body and mind this freedom,
Yeah.
it gets us where we want to go without having to tense all of our muscles and grind our way through it.
Sure. Wow. What's kind of the goal, do you think, if somebody asks you the question, like, Doug, what's the goal of yoga in my world? What's like a simple, what's the goal of it for you? Let's start with that. What's when you practice yoga, what is the goal? What are you hoping happens in that time that you're investing in that spot?
So the energy, the answer I will give is to move energy. And I know that can be kind of a woo-woo answer for people to hear energy in this.
Yeah. Yep.
So the the analogy I want to give is um, I imagine we've all seen or can understand these video clips of a gazelle when it one gets caught by a lion and is on the brink of death, but then escapes. Afterward, the animal, the gazelle, will just lie down and you'll see it having this seizure of its body freaking out, it looks like.
Sure.
And what that is it just went through a really traumatic experience and it knows rather than carry this in my body and just live with this trauma, I
Yeah.
can let it release and then I can go and live my life as I want to without holding this. The problem is, I mentioned it briefly earlier, we go through life concerned about what other people are going to think. So Someone cuts us off on the road, we get angry. We don't release that anger, we suppress it because our kid is in the back and we don't want to yell.
Yeah.
Um, Someone threatening on the street comes up to us, but we want to act normal and not scream and run, so we don't do that. And all of
Yeah.
the that energy, that emotion, that feeling doesn't get to have its natural cyclical conclusion like the gazelle is getting. So
Wow.
the body holds those, and that turns into stress, and stress turns into cancer, and it just hasn't been able to move. So that's what this devoted time of yoga breath work allows, is for us to say, all right, body, like the next 30, 45 minutes is yours. Do what you have to do. And a lot of people report during these sessions, uh, body shaking, big yawns, crying, screaming,
Yeah.
because the body is like, finally, I can do these things rather than
Yeah.
push it down and get it stuck in the body. And then
Yeah.
afterward, oh, it feels so good you're lighter, you're more free. You don't have that stuff that it shouldn't be in your body in there anymore.
Wow. That kind of flies in the face of be in control at all times. Don't let them see a sweat. Don't show them your cards. I mean, that business, some of those business um, postures that we were raised with. So I'm guessing a lot of people listening right now are like, what?
And it's
You know?
ironic too, because not be or always be in control, I would argue you're really not if you're suppressing all these emotions and not properly expressing them. And the real
Yeah.
way to be in control is, oh yeah, I go to kickboxing class every day and I kick out my frustration, or I scream into my pillow because I don't want that to control me. I control it. So
Wow.
yeah, I don't want to do it in public, so
Yeah.
I do it into my pillow, and that's me having control over it.
Oh, that's a cool way to look at it. And so I'm just curious, like you talked about this energy being part of the cause of stress. Are there other causes of stress? I mean, I think there's, I don't know what the right words, I'm going to say healthy stress, where like if you get a project at work and it's a 20-hour project and they give you 20 hours to do the work, that's a healthy stress to get that thing done at the end. If they give you that same 20-hour project at noon and you have to have it done by 5 o'clock, that's an unhealthy stress. So that's how I see it. How would you define like healthy stress, just for the listener and for me to be able to learn from?
Yeah, another great question. I believe it all comes back to this conscious relationship to the objective thing. So that is the stressor. So in this instance, let's say I have 5 hours to do a project that should take 20. We could both get that same project. You could be like, "Oh, I totally think I could do this. This is going to be a fun challenge. This doesn't give me negative stress at all." I could say, "Uh-oh, I think I'm going to get fired because I definitely can't do this in 5 hours. And then what
Yeah.
am I going to do? I need to find a new job. I need to have kids
Right.
to support." And that same objective thing totally creates different things, reactions in our bodies. And one of those is much more healthy and one isn't. And even so, even if I feel, oh, I totally cannot do this in 5 hours, it's like, okay, well, am I thinking I'm going to get fired? That's not good. I'm going to need to, or am I thinking I'm just going to tell my boss I can't do it and try and get an extension. And if not,
Yeah.
then that's okay. If I get fired, I know like there's this other company I want to work at, and that'll be an exciting opportunity. So like even if the ability and my capability of doing that thing, regardless of whether that is, it's how am I relating to it and how much impact am I deciding to let it have on my health and my life.
Oh, that's really great. And I think a lot of it, then, what I'm hearing you say, Doug, is a lot of it has to do with how it appears, how we look at it, how we approach it. Again, half empty, half full type scenario where, this is awesome. I'm going to crush this thing, or oh my gosh. my kids are never going to eat again. I have a client that's just absolutely crushing his business, and he's so worried, even to this day, about I'm going to have to sell my house and my kids are going to, have to be in the poor house. And it's just like that's so far from where they are, but yet that's kind of the thing that he's constantly got in his mind. So that's got to be that causes anxiety, that causes stress. So, like for me, I start to talk to myself. We do a lot of work with emotional intelligence and EQ, and I start, asking myself, like, what's the worst that can happen, in this situation? Do you find yourself talking to yourself a lot and kind of not in a like a weird way, but just kind of telling yourself, hey, this isn't accurate, this is accurate? Do you notice yourself doing that pretty regularly?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm grateful it's pretty second nature to me. It's
Yeah,
something I work with my fiance a lot, where anytime that I sense that she's really stressed about something, I do exactly what you said. Like, all right, what's the worst case scenario of what happens? And then
right,
we get like 10 worst cases down the line. If we just get the biggest string of unluckiness, and I'm like,
right.
okay, let's imagine hypothetically we're there. Are we okay? She's like,
Yeah,
yeah. I'm like, okay. So
yeah,
if the worst thing happens 10 times in a row, we're still okay. So
yeah.
like now that we know that, let's prepare and hope that that doesn't happen. But if it somehow does, we'll be okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. In my research and preparing for today, you talked about 5 minutes is all we need. So, what does that mean to you? Because I was really interested, because again, a lot of times the people listening are like, hey, I can devote a few minutes of, if I got to do half a day of this or an hour or two of that, it gets to be a lot harder to commit to. But you talked about 5 minutes is all we need. What were you referring to when you said that?
So I'll share two of my favorite tools that I highly recommend people check out.
Yeah,
One of them is called One Sec. It's an app for your phone that uh, I program myself. I pick what apps are a problem for me. And when I next open those apps, it makes me take a deep breath and says, are you sure you want to open this app? And Instagram is a very common one.
yeah,
And then if you say yes, it says, all right, how many minutes do you need? And I can set 10 minutes. That feels like enough. And then after
yeah,
10 minutes, it reminds me again. And I can say, yeah, I want another 10. But just having those checks, those boundaries in has
yeah,
saved me hours of, oh shit, it's been 3 hours at this point and I'm still on Instagram. So I highly recommend that app. I think it's $3 for a year,
sure. And it's called
something
One Sec.
one sec. Yep,
Okay,
2 words. And then
cool.
my other one of my favorite apps is called Othership. It's like Mothership without the M.
Okay,
And it is a breathwork app. They have on-demand sessions, everything from 2 minutes to 75. And for sleep, for energy, for productivity. And the reason I bring this up is it happened right before we started this podcast with 10 minutes to go. I jumped into the Zoom room and I was like, well, I have 10 minutes. And initially, I went to my phone and opened Instagram, and that was how I was going to kill my time. And then I was like, wait, there's a better way to use this 5, 10 minutes I have here. And I put
yeah,
on this session called Altitude Lounge, which you can find for free on the Othership website. And it's just such a nice reset. And I feel so much better after that 4 minutes than I would having watched, a couple Instagram reels.
yeah,
Uh, and it didn't require, some big commitment. It was just a simple switch of rather than open this app, I'm going to open this one. And doing that in as little as 5 minute, even less increments.
yeah, yeah,
And that could be journaling. I'm just going to write for 5 minutes instead of open Instagram. Uh, it's those small things that make a day, and it's the days that make the weeks, and so on and so on.
sure.
And then that is what our life becomes. So, yeah, I find it really refreshing to not have to go take some 200-hour yoga teacher training. Like
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be that. It's just the small choices adding up, and giving ourselves grace when we do choose Instagram because there's nothing
Yeah,
wrong with that. There's some great stuff on there,
sure.
but making a conscious effort when we can to make some better choices for ourselves.
Oh, that's great. And the older that I get, Doug, the more I feel like just sitting for 5 minutes and just looking out the window. I mean, I remember when I was a kid and my grandma, I would come over and would be sitting with her and she would just be looking out the window, and it's just like, oh my gosh, are you there? And then you start to realize that it's like there's just some real power and peace in some of those things that we learned as kids and watched our parents and grandparents do. So those are awesome. Couple questions as we start to land, and I'm going to let you go. Journaling, you've been referring to it for a lot, and I hear it a lot. I'm not sure if you have any simple ideas or helps for us because there's been plenty of times where I just look at a blank sheet of paper and I'm just like, okay, what should I write? And then I feel like the stress coming on, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is supposed to limit and minimize this, and it's making it worse. So, how do you, when you look at a blank sheet of paper for yourself, how do you kind of what is there anything specific that you start writing about right away?
Yeah, great question, and definitely something I still struggle with, even with the tools that I have. So my current practice, and I say current because it changes all the time, and I think that's the big key to success is not saying it has to be done this way at this time,
Sure.
and if I miss it, I'm not doing it that day.
Yeah.
All this stuff is a tool belt that's constantly revolving. Uh,
Gotcha.
so the book, The Artist's Way, the author talks about morning pages, which is as soon as I wake up, 3 pages of just stream of consciousness. Like, don't stop writing until I hit 3 pages, and then don't look at it again. Like, don't reread it. And I really like that idea. I never get to 3 pages. That's so much, and like I don't want to spend that much time in the morning.
Yeah.
So when I'm in practice with it, I'll usually get 1 page of a not even that big journal that I have near my bed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll just start writing a little bit. If I remembered anything from a dream, I'll write about that. I'll write about how I'm feeling. I'll write about whatever I feel like I have to do today.
Yeah.
And I'll write, this is stupid. I'm not enjoying this. What am I writing about? I'm writing about nothing. Random word, gratitude, love. I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
Like just totally whatever.
Sure.
And then I close it and I don't read it again. And on days when I do that, it's just I feel so much lighter and like my mind feels so much more at peace.
Mm.
Where days when I don't, I just feel kind of bogged down and there's things like I have a running to-do list. I have this, what was that dream about? Like there's so much stuff going on that
Yeah.
is draining my energy from fully being present in eating breakfast or going to the gym or
Sure.
working on my work project.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So again, for someone listening, the encouraging piece is to just get a notebook and open it up. And you know what? The cool part is, like Doug said, there's nothing wrong to write about. There's nothing right to write about. There's the length of it, whatever. Just start writing. And, like I said, I look at a blank page and I'm like, crap, what am I gonna, what do I want? I feel like it's like someone's gonna read it, like I'm writing another book, right? And it's like, my gosh, he just said, don't even look back at it. Just kind of let it flow and and get and practice at it because I feel like that will, if you empty some of that out, it's probably some of that energy that you were referring to before. It just kind of flows. So thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
And I just want
Um,
to add,
yeah, for sure.
that's how you'll find what works for you is taking that first step. The next step usually doesn't illuminate itself until that first one's taken. So a common uh, metaphor that's used is for people that want to learn how to play guitar. It's like, oh, it's been sitting in my closet for years. It's like, all right, day one, just take it out of the closet and put it next to the closet. Don't even play it.
Yeah,
And that's the next step. And then day two, three, four, it's like, oh, I see it sitting there. I'm just going to strum
yeah,
a little bit. And
yeah,
then 3 years later, you're playing guitar, and you're great at it. And
yeah.
who would have known? Like it just took that first step, that first boundary of I'm gonna put it in my space. I'm gonna
Sure.
write one line on one sheet of paper, and that's a journaling practice. The first time I meditated, I fell asleep on my bed in 2 minutes, but that started a practice.
Yeah, wow, that's funny. Well, I have a personally signed guitar from Roger Waters from Pink Floyd, and I would
Amazing.
never play it because obviously it's worth something, but I've never walked by it and been like, I'd really like to play that. So there's certain things, but to your point, if you don't even have a notebook, if you don't buy it, put it out, whatever, that's like the first step. Don't wait until your brain has got a ton of stuff and it's like, oh my gosh, where's a piece of paper? So I
Exactly.
love easing into that. That's fantastic. So, last question before I let you go, Doug. What would your tip of the day be for somebody listening? Maybe it's something that we covered. Maybe it's something that's still on your heart that needs to get out. But what would your tip of the day be today?
Be present. And I will elaborate on that. I love that you asked that. I ask on my podcast, what's the one thing you want people to go away with? And I'm always interested to see if people just say one thing or if they elaborate. And now that I'm
Yeah,
now that I'm sharing,
now you know
I want to elaborate.
for sure.
Uh, so yes, be present. I strongly believe that uh, anything bad, stress, tension, anxiety, it can't exist in the present and when one's being grateful for the present. It's when we start to ruminate about the past or we start to plan or be anxious about the future
Yeah,
that that gap between what is now reality and that past or future, the terrors flock to fill that gap, to fill that void. So anytime we're able to not have that gap, not let it exist, and just say, I'm here now. I'm
yeah,
breathing deep into my belly. I'm having a great conversation. I will worry about the things to come when they come, and I will set aside times to reflect on the past and learn from it. Uh, can't go wrong. Can't be in a bad mindset when we're present.
that's awesome because we cannot do anything about the past and we don't have a ton of control over the future, but we control where we're at right now. So I love that piece. Excuse me. If somebody's listening, Doug, and they want to learn more about you, they want to learn more about Slow the F Down and how they can, maybe a community that you have, maybe something that we talked about today really resonated with them. They may want to learn more about yin yoga, journaling, breathing, some of the other stuff we talked about. What's the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, the best way is on Instagram. My name is Doug is slow with underscores between Doug is slow. And I have a link on there to set up a free discovery chat with me where we can talk one on one. I share tips and comedy and a whole bunch of fun stuff on there. And then there's more on the community specifically at slowtfdown.space is our website where you can learn more about the community.
Awesome. So cool. And for the people listening, rather than jumping into your next thing, you know what? Do what he just said. Slow down for a minute, ponder what was, shared today and kind of think about what's one thing that you could really take away here today. I mean, it's really sometimes we consume so much information. And I remember that I stopped reading books because I was at a book a month clip. And I'd look back and go, I can't tell you one thing about that book that I read. And I'm like, I'm just wasting time at that point. So I've been more intentional in rereading things. This is the same scenario. Take one thing that Doug said today and implement it into your life and see what happens. And if you're still struggling, reach out to Doug on Instagram. Reach out to him on his website. And I saw that you're on LinkedIn as well. So definitely don't just jump into your next activity, but slow the F down. Okay. So thank you so much for hanging out with us, Doug. Thank you for sharing your story, and can't wait to keep learning from you and appreciate all you're doing.
Thanks, Dave. This was a lot of fun, and I hope that, yeah, there's a valuable nugget in there for people listening.